You stopped needing people to understand you, not because you gave up, because you realized most of them never would. And somewhere along the way, that stopped bothering you. There was a version of you that worked hard to be liked. You explained your decisions. You softened your edges. You laughed at things that weren't funny. You showed up to things you didn't want to attend because you didn't want to seem difficult. You performed a version of yourself that was easier for other people to accept. And for a while, it worked. People approved, but you were exhausted. At some point, and you probably can't name the exact moment, something shifted. You stopped explaining. Not loudly, not dramatically. You just quietly stopped. You stopped defending choices that didn't require defense. You stopped justifying why you said no. You stopped over-clarifying your position to people who had already decided what they thought. You just let the silence sit there, and nothing collapsed. That's where this starts. Because the man who stops chasing approval isn't detached. He's not cold. He's not angry at the world. He just ran the numbers. He looked at what it cost him to keep seeking validation from people who didn't really see him, and he decided the return wasn't worth the investment. That's not bitterness. That's a man who finally got honest with himself. You don't need a crowd to confirm your decisions anymore. If you make a choice and nobody claps, that's fine. You're not doing it for applause. You built something. You walked away from something. You changed direction. And you didn't announce it. You didn't wait for feedback. You just moved. Other men your age are still checking reactions, still measuring their choices against what looks respectable, still curating how they're perceived on the outside, while the inside feels hollow. You left that behind. And most people around you don't fully understand why. Here's what's actually happening psychologically. Approval seeking is a regulation strategy. When a man is young, it works. You get social feedback. You learn what's acceptable. You calibrate your behavior against other people's responses. That's functional early in life. But at a certain point, that strategy starts working against you. Because external approval is unstable. It shifts with whoever's in the room. It depends on what people are projecting that day. It has nothing to do with whether your decision was actually right. Men who reach midlife and haven't updated this strategy are still handing power to the wrong source. They feel unsettled when someone disapproves. They second-guess sound decisions because someone reacted poorly. They make choices designed to manage perception instead of build a life. You stopped doing that, not all at once, slowly, but you stopped. You notice it in small moments now. Someone disagrees with you and you don't feel the pull to convince them. Someone misreads your intention and you don't rush to correct the record. Someone exits your life without explanation and you feel the sting, but you don't chase. That's a different kind of man. Not unfeeling, regulated. There's a specific thing that happens when a man stops chasing approval. He gets quieter, not depressed quiet, not withdrawn quiet, settled quiet. He stops filling every silence with performance. He stops explaining himself in rooms where he doesn't feel respected. He stops working to be understood by people who don't put in the same effort. He gets selective, and people sometimes read that as arrogance. It's not. It's economy. He has a finite amount of energy. He's learned, often the hard way, what happens when he spends it on the wrong rooms. So he got deliberate about where it goes. You probably have a shorter list of people you trust now than you did 15 years ago. That's not failure. That's refinement. The men who haven't done this work are still maintaining relationships that cost them more than they give. Still performing loyalty to people who wouldn't return it. Still sitting in rooms where they don't feel like themselves because they don't know how to exit without guilt. You figured out how to exit without guilt. That's harder than it sounds. Let's talk about what was underneath the approval seeking for most men. It wasn't weakness. It was identity uncertainty. When you don't know exactly who you are, when your sense of self is still being constructed, you use other people's reactions as data. Their approval tells you, this version is acceptable. Their disapproval tells you, adjust. That's functional when you're forming. But most men don't realize they've already formed. They keep running the same feedback loop long after they have a stable, clear sense of who they are. They keep asking the question when they already know the answer. The man who stopped chasing approval isn't asking anymore. He knows what he values. He knows how he operates. He knows what he will and won't accept from people, situations, work, relationships. That knowledge is settled in him. So when someone tries to destabilize it, through criticism, through withdrawal, through disapproval, it lands differently. It registers. But it doesn't restructure him. You've probably been called difficult, or too serious, or hard to read, maybe distant. And for a while, those labels bothered you. You tried to round off the edges. You tried to be more accessible, more open, more whatever the room needed. But at some point, you recognized that the labels were about the other person's comfort, not about accuracy. You weren't difficult. You were just done performing easy. There's a recalibration that happens in men around midlife that psychology doesn't talk about enough. The internal compass takes over. Earlier in life, a man's direction is often set by external reference points: what his father expected, what his culture rewarded, what his career demanded, what his partner needed, what his friends validated. He moves through life tracking these signals. Midlife, real midlife, not the cliche, is when many men start trusting a different signal, their own, not in a dramatic everything burns down way, quietly, gradually. They start noticing when something is off, not because someone told them, but because they can feel the misalignment themselves, and they start adjusting toward what's actually true for them. That's what you're doing when you stop chasing approval. You're not rejecting people. You're recalibrating source. You've moved from external calibration to internal, and that shift changes everything. The choices feel more grounded. The decisions hold up under pressure. The discomfort of someone else's disapproval becomes information rather than emergency. You don't panic when someone's unhappy with you. You consider it. And if there's nothing useful in it, you put it down. Men who haven't made this shift are still in reaction mode. A negative comment alters their trajectory. Someone's silence reads as a verdict. A lack of recognition feels like evidence of failure. They're still handing the steering to whoever's in the passenger seat. You took it back. That doesn't mean you stopped caring. You care. But you became discerning about whose opinion actually carries weight. The people you respect, the ones who have shown up, who know you clearly, who tell you the truth without agenda, their feedback still matters to you. You're not closed off. You just removed the open invitation. Now you decide who gets in. Some men mistake this for cynicism. It's not. Cynicism is the belief that nothing is worth it. This is the opposite. This is knowing exactly what's worth it and protecting that clearly. You're not indifferent. You're precise. There's a freedom that comes with this that's hard to describe to someone who hasn't felt it. It's the absence of a particular kind of tension. The tension of constantly monitoring how you're landing, of wondering if you said the wrong thing, of recalibrating based on whether someone seemed pleased. When that goes quiet, there's a lot of space that opens up. Space to think clearly, space to act without interference, space to just be who you actually are without the performance layer running in the background. You don't work for applause anymore. You work because the work matters to you. You don't maintain connections to manage perception. You maintain them because they're real. You don't shape your choices around approval. You shape them around what you actually know to be true. That's not a small thing. Most men never get there. They die still managing other people's impressions of them, still editing themselves in rooms where they should have just spoken, still softening truths that deserve to be said plainly, still waiting for a validation that was never going to come, or that was never going to feel like enough. You stopped waiting, not out of resignation and out of clarity. You know who you are, you know what you're doing, you know why. That's enough.